Hi everyone. Today we are going to start with a chapter Indian Partnership Act 1932. Okay. Now this is a part of your economics, business and commercial laws part C, right? Part C in the business laws we have 5 acts which we are going to study. We have Sale of Goods Act, we have Contract Act, we also have Specific Relief Act, Indian Partnership Act and Negotiable Instruments Act. So there are 5 acts which are we going to study in our business laws. I'm starting with the most simplest one, which is Indian Partnership Act, okay, 1932. As you can see the brief outline, okay, of this chapter, it is like basically very simple. We will be looking at the objectives of this act. What is a partnership? What are the essential features required for a partnership? And the essentials for registration of a partnership. Classification of partners, which are the kinds of partners, what are their rights and duties, relationship of the partners with the third parties and relationship of the partners amongst themselves, and the dissolution of the partnership. Okay, so I will be taking you all through each topic with we will go ahead, and I've divided this entire chapter into certain subtopics. Okay, so let's begin. Now, Indian Partnership Act. According to me, according to you all, what do you all think? What is a partnership? What do you all understand by a partnership? Why would a person get into a partnership?
To share all profits and losses.
Very good. To share profits and losses. Okay. It can be that also the other reason, say, Mr. A, he has got the capital. Okay. But he does not have the requisite, you can say either the infrastructure. He does not have that particular, alone he cannot do a particular business. But that particular experience Mr. B has had. So they can both get together and start a partnership business. Correct? Because there is capital also available. There is experience also available, with which a partnership firm can be started and the business can be done in order to share the profits. So the third most important thing is that the partnership here is for purpose of business. Business only, okay, a lawful business which is lawful in India, okay, and it is for the purpose of sharing the profits and losses. And obviously partnership can arise only if there is an agreement, between two or more people. Okay, so this is like the entire definition under section 4 of Indian Partnership Act 1932, section 4, which talks about the definition. It talks about these 4 elements or these 4 essentials of the Indian Partnership Act. So if we have got this clear, that partnership is nothing but it is an agreement between 2 or more persons. What is the agreement for? For carrying on a business and thus sharing the profit and losses arising from the business. It's as simple as that. Okay, so let's move to the, I have prepared these notes, okay, to simplify your studying. Coming to the introduction, okay, as I told you, introduction and Partnership Act 1932, it is applicable to the whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. So for Jammu and Kashmir it is not applicable. Okay, so this act is applicable to whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, now when I am talking about Partnership Act, okay, so there is a contract between the partners. So there is an agreement which the partnerships enter into. That agreement need to have the essential elements of the contract, valid contract, for carrying on a lawful business, for a lawful consideration, for sharing profits and loss. There are certain essential elements of the contract. If all the essential elements of the contract are present, then the agreement is valid and the Partnership Act becomes valid under this section. Now definition. Coming to that definition which I explained you all, section 4. Okay. There must be at least two persons. There must be a relationship arising out of the agreement. So I told you there has to be an agreement between two or more people in order to do a business and to share the profits. And the business must be carried on by all or any one of them acting for all. Okay, now this is a concept of mutual agency. Okay, it is basically whenever any act is performed by one partner, all the other partners are also liable for that particular act. Okay, and if all the partners perform a particular act, that other one partner is liable for that particular act performed by the partner. So this is a mutual agency. Mutually they come together. It is one partner acting for all or all partners acting for one. Okay, so for the main if I want to understand that whether this firm is a joint venture or whether it is a partnership, so it will be a partner because there are certain elements which are similar in joint venture as well as in partnership. But in partnership, the true test is of the mutual agency. If the mutual agency is occurring between the partners, then that particular firm will be treated by the law as a partnership firm. Okay. Now, persons who have entered into the partnership with another are called individual partners, and collectively thus they are called as firm, and then they provided with a firm name for carrying on the business. So the definition itself is the essentials. See, here there are two or more persons having an agreement to carry on a particular business and the purpose of sharing profits. Okay. Now, only sharing of profits is not a conclusive test of a partnership, as I said. Okay, let's read this. Okay. Although sharing of profits is a prima facie evidence of the existence of a partnership, but this is not a conclusive test of the same. The person may have a share in the partnership profit, but still they may not be a partner. For example, say a joint owner of a particular property, sharing its return, or members of non-profit or non-trading association will not be called partners. Okay, so there has to be a true test of mutual agency. I have given here an example. A and B, they buy 100 bales of cotton. Now they agree to sell for their joint account. Each party sharing profits and bearing the losses equal. A and B buy 100 bales of cotton, agreeing to divide these between them. A and B then are not partners. Here they are partners. But here they are buying it, but then individually they are keeping it and then they are doing their selling. Next example, a trader, owed money to XYZ and company. He agreed to pay XYZ out of the profits of his business, run under the supervision of XYZ, what he owed to them. It was held that the agreement does not make XYZ a partners with A and B in the business, because it is a totally different thing. Okay, it is not a liability of XYZ. Here Mr. A is a trader, he had to pay money to XYZ. No doubt that money which he had to pay to XYZ was under the supervision of XYZ and company itself. But that doesn't mean that A and XYZ company are partners. So only in the first instance, if you see, it is known as a partner. Mutual agency, which is a true test. This is an important from your exam point of view also. Okay. Mutual agency is a foundation of partners' liability. Each partner is both. He is an agent and principal for himself. Okay, so the agent and principal relationship is there in a partnership firm. Okay, he is an agent and principal for himself and also for the others. Carried on by all or any of them acting for all. So each partner is an agent of the other partners. Okay, binding the other partners who are his principals, and each partner is again a principal who is turn bound by the acts of the other partners. So the true test of determining a partnership is to see whether mutual agency is existing. Okay. Now the next topic is a formation of partnership. Okay. Now, how a partnership is formed, I told you partnership is a valid contract. So the agreement needs to have the essential elements of a contract. Okay. Under the Partnership Act, there must be an agreement between the partners. That agreement must comply with the essentials of a valid contract. What are the essentials? First, there must be a free consent of the parties to enter into the contract mutually. There is no force. Okay. They must be competent to contract. Okay, major age, though minor is also allowed. That we will come to it, that even minor is allowed to a partnership. Object of the partnership has to not be forbidden by law. The object has to be lawful. It should not be immoral or opposed to the public policy. Okay. A minor may be admitted to the benefits of the partnership with the consent of all the other partners. And as relationship of partners inter se is that of the agency, no consideration is required to create for the partnership. Okay. Now, one of the essential element of a contract is consideration. There has to be a consideration in order to create a contract. Okay. Once you have an agreement, agreement necessarily does not become a contract. If agreement has all the essentials present of a contract, then only agreement will turn and become a contract. Okay. Now, in those essentials, one of them, there should be competent to contract. You should have an object which is lawful object. They should have a free consent together. Okay. And there is one important, that it has to have a lawful consideration. Simple. What is a consideration? Say suppose A has entered into a contract with Mr. B, okay, to buy a house. A is a buyer, B is a seller. Okay. So A is going to buy the house and A is going to make the payment. So there is a consideration which will move from A to B. And from B to A, what is the consideration which will move? Which will be the peaceful possession and handover of the property, transfer of the property. But in partnership, since there is already agent and principal, relationship involved, so agency is that type of contract, special contract, which does not require consideration. Okay, because here the consideration is already existing. Okay, principal is going to appoint an agent to carry on the business on his behalf. So there is already a consideration which will move even from the agent side. Agent will do the business on behalf of the principal and principal pay the commission. So here there is an automatic consideration which is present. So specific consideration need not be necessary. So agency contract does not require any consideration. Partnership being an agency contract, no consideration is required to create the partnership. Alright. Am I clear so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now moving to the next, partnership deed. Okay, partnership deed, generally certain times, partners, they enter into an agreement orally only. But it is always advisable to put all this in writing to avoid any future disputes. Okay. Even one more important thing is partnership agreement is not necessary for registration under this act. But if you do not register it, you do not get any assistance from the court. So it is better that you have a partnership agreement, and registration is now very simple. Okay, everything is over online. So put the deed, all the terms and terminologies on the deed and get it registered. So partnership deed will consist everything. It will consist about who are the partners, then what is their profit sharing ratio, okay, how much is the capital provided by the partners, if there is interest payable on the capital, interest on capital, interest on drawings also, interest on drawings and capital. So these will be all the terms and conditions which will be there in a partnership deed. Okay. Coming to classification of a partnership, there are only two types of partnership. Either you can have a partnership at will or you can have a particular partnership. Now, particular partnership under section 8 is nothing but it is for a particular purpose. For a particular adventure or for a particular undertaking, you come together. Once your purpose is achieved, your partnership comes to an end. That is known as a particular partnership. But if you enter into a partnership which is going to be there for an ongoing concern, but it will dissolve later on the will of the partners, by the will, the partners themselves want to dissolve the partnership, then it will be known as a partnership at will. Okay, so here where there are no provisions at all made in the contract between the partners regarding the duration, then or the determination means the closure, okay, this dissolution of the partnership, then the partnership is called as partnership at will. A partnership is deemed to be a partnership at will. Generally, it is always deemed, by default we will consider it that it is a partnership at will when no fixed period has been mentioned for the duration and there is no provision for the determination of the partnership in any other way. However, if there are only two partners, okay, and one partner dies, so of course it will be, the partnership will come to an end. Okay, but if say there are more than two, so the partnership may dissolve, but the partnership firm will continue. The partnership between say Mr. A, B and C, that will come to an end because B has died. Now it will be only between A and C. Okay, so the partnership's firm can still continue. Okay, see, where the partnership is at a will, the firm may be dissolved by the partners after giving a notice in writing to all the other partners of this intention to dissolve the firm. Okay, now the firm will be dissolved as from the date mentioned in the notice as a date of dissolution, or if there is no date mentioned, then from the date of communication of the notice. Okay, so partnership at will and partnership at particular partnership, these are only two types of partnerships. Now they have given you certain distinguishes of partnership from the different other types and forms of business. We have co-ownership and partnership, they are two different things. Okay, co-ownership and partnership does not mean the same thing. Then we have a difference between HUF and partnership, then company and partnership. Okay, so there are three distinguishes which they have just given. Okay, you all can read them. If there is any doubt, we will get back to it and discuss about it. But they're just basic, the features and essentials which are present in a company and in partnership, and that is how the two entities are different. Okay, two types are different. Okay. Now, change in a firm. Change in the constitution of a firm. Okay. How does that? What is the changes? How can I say that there is a change in the constitution of the firm? Firm was made. Okay, there were three partners. The firm was made. Agreement was entered into. Contract, valid contract. Everything said and done. But how can there be a change in the constitution of the firm? Say suppose there is changes in the nature of the business or undertakings. Okay, they have changed the type of the business they are going to conduct. Also, they have changed the duration of their firm. Correct? Next changes. Okay, another type. If I am adding a new partner in my firm, there will be a change in the constitution of my firm. If a particular partner retires, then again there will be a change in the constitution. If a partner is expelled, removed, a partner is now insolvent and a particular partner dies. So if any of this occurs, I will say there is a change in the constitution of the firm. Now, change in the nature of the business which they are carrying, that can be brought only if there is a consent of all the partners. It can just not happen randomly. Okay, yeah, but a particular partner dies or becomes insolvent, etc. For that, obviously, you do not require any consent. Admission, yes, you require a consent of all the partners. Okay, but if you are changing the nature of the business, consent of all the partners is very important. Okay. Now, partnership property. What can I say whether this property is a partnership property or whether it is not a partnership property? Okay. Now, say suppose I am entering into a partnership. Okay. So this is A and B. Okay, B is saying that yes, I have the capital. A is also saying yes, even I have the capital. Then A is saying I'm also having one office, which I can provide it to the firm. You can pay rent, the firm will pay rent to me. And also there can be, there can be a property which is brought in by the partners. There can be a property where afterwards it is acquired by the firm also. Okay. Now, how do we understand what is a partnership property? Because later on there should not be any disputes. Okay, it is open to the partners to agree amongst themselves as to what is to be treated as the property of the firm. So say if this Mr. A is transferring this entire office in the name of the firm, then it's fine, it will be a partnership firm's property. Okay, and what is to be a separate property of one or more partners? Okay, this will be only mine, this will be only at the time of dissolution, then that property will go back to that individual partner. Okay, although it had employed for the purpose of the firm. Now, in absence of any such agreement, okay, the property of the firm is deemed to include all the property rights and interests which have been brought into the common stock for the purpose of partnership by the individual partners, whether at the commencement of the business or subsequently thereto. Means what? Common stock for which they are carrying on the business, okay, the trading, which they have all the property in that stock, their rights, interests, etc., which was brought for the purpose of the partnership. Okay, then that will be considered to be the partnership property if there is an absence of agreement between the partners. Second, those acquired in the course of business with the money belonging to the firm, obviously. So that will be partnership property because you have acquired that property with the money of the firm itself. Okay. The property of the firm belongs to the firm and not to the individual partner or the partners. The ownership belongs to the firm and no partner can deal with the specific properties as if the property is of his own, nor does the partners possess any assignable interest in any such property. Okay, so whatever is the partnership property, it is the firm's property and not the individual partner's property. Okay, so in order to decide the ultimate test to determine whether the property of the firm is the real intention of the partners, and the court can take the consideration of the following facts. One, what is the source of purchase money? Second, the reason due to which the property was purchased or acquired. Object of the property, why it was purchased. Mode in which the property was obtained. The mode in which property was dealt, and the use to which the property was put to. So if a court has to decide and there is some discrimination whether this property is a partnership property or not, then these following points can be taken into consideration. Thus, it is always advisable, to put it down in writing as to what they want to treat it as a partnership property and what they want to treat it as an individual partner's property. Alright. This is all in absence of an expressed agreement. Okay. Now coming to an interesting and the most important part of the chapter also. Okay. Kind of partners. You have normal, this actual, active or ostensible partner. They are the partners who are involved into the day-to-day transaction of the business. They participate in the entire management of the business. They share profit and losses. Okay. Now, such partners are actively participating in the firm's business and therefore binds himself and the firm, binds himself and the other partners by all the acts done in the usual course of the business. Now, whenever such partner retires, okay, or in case he is not retired but he dies, okay, there has to be notice given of his retirement. Why? Because he is known to the outside public. He is known to the creditors. So there has to be a notice of his retirement from the firm in order to absolve himself from the liability for the acts of the other partners done after his retirement. Okay, so it may happen that, say suppose Mr. X, Mr. Y, and Mr. Z. They three were partners. Okay, all three are active partners. Mr. Z retired. There has to be a notice given for such retirement so that the creditors will know. There was no notice given. Partnership business was carried on. Okay, so people were trading with them, creditors and all their vendors were trading with them, thinking that yes, Mr. Z is still a partner, and they were coming to this firm only because of Mr. Z. And something went wrong. Okay, so there was a liability which arose. So if the liability arises and Z had not given a notice of his retirement, he will be liable for the acts of Mr. X and Y now also, even after retirement. So it has to be, the firm has to be careful, the partner has to be careful that when he is retiring, he should give a notice of his retirement if he is an active partner known to the creditors. Okay. Then we have a sleeping or dormant partners. Now what are these partners? These are just investors. Okay, they invest money in the firm's business and they take their share of profits, but they do not participate. Okay, they do not participate in any of the activities. Okay, but even then their liability is unlimited. ऐसा नहीं है कि उनकी liability नहीं आएगी. Okay, the act specially provides that if an act is binding on the firm, every partner is liable for it. Now a sleeping partner can retire from the firm even if he does not give any public notice. Why? Because obviously he is not known to the creditors. He was a sleeping partner. He had just given some money for carrying on the business. So even if he is retiring without a public notice, here there is not a problem. Okay. Nominal partner, okay, who provides its name. Okay, they do not invest, they do not participate in any management activities, but they just give their name to the business or the firm. Why? Because उनके नाम से लोग आएंगे. Because of their name, people will be doing their business with this particular firm. So they are nominal, but since their name is known to the creditors, since then because of their name they have this goodwill of the firm, okay, in the market, then that particular nominal partner is liable for the third parties, and he has to also give a notice of his retirement if he is taking away his name. Okay, so but they are liable to the third parties for all the acts of the firms. Unlike a sleeping partner, they are known to the outsiders as the partners in the firm, whereas actually they are not. Here, the sleeping partner are partners, actual partners, but they are not participating in the firm business, and they are not known to creditors, outsiders, I'll say, though they are partners. Here they are actually not a partner, they have just lent their name, no investment, no participation, nothing. Okay, but here they are known to outsiders. Okay, though they are not partners. Now there are certain partners who share profits only. So their agreement is only such that they will share only profit but not losses. Generally there cannot be a partnership firm without being a liability for the loss. Okay, but here a partner who is entitled to share in the profits of the partnership firm without being liable to share the losses is called a partner in profit only. How does this work? A person who has sufficient capital, okay, but is not prepared to take any risk. Okay, so now I was in need, Mr. X and Mr. Y, we were carrying on the business, but now we needed capital and we don't have. So we had to call up Mr. Z. He has got ample of capital, but he's saying, okay, I'll give you, but I will share only profit. Losses you all will bear. Okay, so this Mr. Z is known as a partner in profits only. He will give us the capital in order to run the business. Okay. In spite of his specific position, he continues to be liable to the third parties, okay, for all the acts of the firms like any other partner. Okay. Then you have a sub-partner. Generally, a sub-partner is not a, it is there theoretically, generally do not have, but sub-partner is someone, let's say Mr. A, Mr. B and Mr. C. Only these three are the partners. Now Mr. A cannot, and he wants someone else to assist him for the work, etc. So he appointed Mr. D as a sub partner. Okay. So here what will happen, whatever share Mr. A will get from his profit. So say there was a profit of 30,000, equal sharing profit. So 10, 10, 10,000. There will be no separate profit removed from Mr. D. Mr. A will have to share his share with Mr. D with whatever ratio. It might be 3:1, or 30% and 60% or 70%, something like that. But it has to be between that partner and the sub partner only. The firm is not liable to pay that particular partner. Okay. Now partner by estoppel or partner by holding out. Now first thing to understand is what is holding out. What do you mean by holding out? Okay. Holding out means to represent. You represent yourself. You are a stranger to the firm, but you are representing such that you are a partner. Okay. You are giving, you're making a credibility in the market about that particular firm, saying that, oh, I am the partner over there. Okay, though you do not work or do not have provided any capital, nothing, but you are just giving a representation for others. They are believing it to be true. Okay, and therefore they are trying to do business with that particular firm. So partners by holding out means if a behavior of a person arouses any misunderstandings that he is a partner in a firm but he is actually not, such person is then later stopped from denying the liabilities for the acts of the firm. Such person is called as a partner by estoppel and is liable to all the third parties. Okay. Similarly, if a person who is declared to be a partner when he is actually not, does not deny the fact that he is a partner, he is being held out as a partner responsible for all the liabilities of the business. Okay. So by anyone's words, whether they are spoken, written, they are conducting themselves, as such that they are partner in that firm, then he are liable to all the acts of the other partners also. Okay. So partners are by holding out. Now, what is the effect of holding out? The holding out partner becomes personally and individually liable, immediately, personally liable and also individually liable for the acts of the firm. But he does not become a partner in the firm and therefore he is not entitled to any rights or claims upon the firm. Here, an outsider who has given credit to the firm, thinking him to be a partner, can hold him liable as if he was a partner of that firm. तो बैंक ने लोन दे दिया उस फर्म को सोच के कि भाई ये भी उस फर्म में पार्टनर है, बट था नहीं. ओके, जस्ट एन एग्जांपल आई एम गिविंग. ओके, hypothetical. Here the bank can hold him liable personally and individually. Okay, he will treat him as a partner though he is not. As a liability of a partner is joint and several, he can be held liable to pay the entire amount. Joint and several liability means what? See, Mr. A and Mr. B. Okay, they went ahead and they took a loan from HDFC of rupees, say, 1 lakh. Okay, now there was a default in the payment of the loan. Okay, now there was, say they had to pay the loan back, right? So they are jointly and severally liable, both have to pay this loan. Okay, now what will HDFC Bank do? Say Mr. A, okay, is not to be found. They will take this entire amount from B, 1 lakh rupees. Okay, then B can recover it from A, that is a different thing. But they can recover this whole amount from Mr. B because they are jointly and they are severally together liable. Okay. But under the subrogation, this is the doctrine of subrogation, he can recover the amount so paid from the partners of the firm even if they are solvent. Obviously, if they have money, only then they can pay. Now, exceptions to the holding out. Okay, now what are the exceptions? First, you cannot make that other partner liable who is just treating himself to be a partner though he is not. Here it does not apply to the cases of any torts which are committed by the partner. Okay, so a person therefore cannot be held liable for the torts of another simply because that other person held himself to be his partner. No, for torts this is not applicable. Okay, torts committed by the partners. Also, it is not applicable to the extent to bind the estate of a deceased partner, where after a partner's death the business of the firm continued in the old firm name. Now he is already dead. Okay, so here that partner, say Mr. A and B, did not give a notice of the death of Mr. C. So now you cannot hold his estate to be liable. He is already dead. Okay, for the particular acts of Mr. A and B. Right? Third, it does not apply where the holding out partner has been adjudicated insolvent. Okay. He was being insolvent. So again, holding out will not be applicable in that case. So in three cases, in case of torts, in case of death, and in case of insolvency, holding out rule is not applicable. Okay. Am I clear so far? Okay, now let's come to minor admitted to the benefits of the partner. Now being a minor, okay, a minor is not competent to contract under the Indian Contract Act. Okay, that a partner cannot be a minor in the age. But in case of Indian Partnership Act, they said that okay, no problem. A minor is incompetent to contract, correct, but he can be taken into the firm only for the benefits of the partner. On a minor, liability cannot be created. On a minor, there cannot be liability created, but yes, benefits can, no? Benefits are in the favor of the minor, no? So the law always looks at the benefits of the minor. So if it is benefiting the minor, yes, definitely you can admit the minor also in the firm, and it has to be with the consent of all the partners. So here provisions under section 30 makes it that with the consent of all the partners for the time being, a minor can be admitted into the benefits of the partnership to which a minor is going to be admitted. Okay. A partnership firm cannot be formed with only minors as a partners. No, that is not allowed. There must be at least two major partners. Therefore, a minor is admitted into the benefits of the partnership. Means what? He will share only profits, but not loss. Okay, only for the benefits of the partnership of that particular minor partner. Now there are certain rights of a minor. First, he is entitled to his agreed share and can inspect the books of accounts also of the firm. He can bring a suit for account and his share when he intends to sever the connections with the firm, but not otherwise. Means he wants to now not have any connections with the firm. Here he can bring a suit for the account and his share of profits if they are not paying. A minor who was admitted for the benefits during his minority. Now what does this mean? See, I'll explain you this with a, say, minor partner. Okay. Obviously this minor is going to attain majority. So after attaining majority, he has to make a decision whether he wants to continue. Okay, elects to be a partner means continue. So now he will be a proper competent party, no? Or he has to elect not to be a partner. He doesn't want to be a partner of this firm. Okay. Now once he is attaining majority, he is given time. So how much time he is given? Within 6 months he has to decide. Okay, तो जैसे ही तुम मेजर हो गए, 18 years हो गए, after that within 6 months you have to decide whether you want to continue or you want to not be a partner. See, if you elect to be a partner, then you undertake a liability. Now first you were not liable, but now you will be liable. You will undertake a liability, and the effective date Okay. Effective date will be the original date of admission in the firm. So it will be not from today's date. It will be that date which was originally entered when he was entered for the benefits of the firm. Okay. So that date effective, it will be that he is now he is supposed to also undertake the liability. So before he wants to become a partner, he needs to understand that what are the liabilities of that particular firm. Okay, what will be the consequences of that liability, what is the business, all these understanding. Okay, a sound decision has to be made. So if he is electing to be a partner, that means he is undertaking all the liability, because liability का firm का तो पहले से ही रहेगा जब से firm बना है. So from that effective date from when he was entered as a partner for the benefits. Okay. But say suppose he does not want to become a partner, then he has to give a public notice. Okay. Now that public notice, say suppose it was not given, or say it was then given. Okay, say suppose he has given a proper public notice, then he ceases to be a partner. Ceases to be a partner. Okay. Okay. Also, he is liable for the acts of the firm. Okay. So say he has already given a notice of he not intending to be a partner, then he will cease to become a partner, but his liability for the acts of the firm, whatever little, it will that be of a minor only, though he has attained majority. No? हो सकता है ना that he attained majority on 1st of Jan. Okay, but then he took 4 months time, in order to take a decision, and then he gave a notice on say 31st of March or 31st of April. So within that period, it does not make him a major, and he cannot be treated to be liable that for this 4 months whatever acts were done by the other partners, you will also be liable as a major. No, his liability will be that of a minor only. Okay, but say if he does not give only any notice, then it will become a default partner. Any acts done by that firm and the partners, it will make him also liable. Okay, so this is about the minor getting admitted in a partnership firm for the benefits of the partnership firm, and while attaining his majority, he has to make a decision whether he wants to continue or he wants to cease to be a partner. If he wants to cease, he should make sure that he gives a public notice. Okay, so this is what is written in the rights of the minor. Now liabilities of a minor, his share in the liability, his share, minor's liability is confined only to the extent of his share in the firm. Only that much he will be liable, not more than that. How much ever share he is getting, no. Say he is getting 10% or 15% of the share in the firm. Only up till that he will be liable also. Okay. Section 30 provides that a minor's share is liable for the acts of the firm. Okay, but a minor is not personally liable for any of the acts. Minor's acts, it will be making the firm liable, but the minor is not liable into anything. Okay, it's only for the benefits. Okay, thus he is neither personally liable nor his private estate is liable for the acts of the firm. Personal liabilities, when a minor on attaining majority elects to become a partner, he then becomes personally liable like any other partner, and election has to be done by the minor. Okay, whether he wants to or he doesn't want to become a partner. Right. Now the remaining chapter I will continue later on. Okay, the relationship of the partner up till dissolution. All right. Thank you.